Hi, I'm Jen Trechek.
And I'm Dr. Onyudi.
And welcome to Season 6 of the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast. This season, we're focusing on occupational therapy in physical health. OTs play a crucial role supporting people to recover, adapt and return to the occupations that matter most.
We'll be exploring real-world practice, innovation, challenges, and the evolving role of occupational therapy across physical health services in Ireland and beyond.
So whether you're a clinician, a student, a user of services, or just passionate about occupational therapy, we're glad you're here. Let's get started. We're absolutely delighted today in the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast to introduce Martina Tierney. Anybody who's been to any OT conferences will probably know Martina's name or have met her. She is an OT for many years and has set up Seating Matters, is an absolute international expert in seating, and has written a number of books, including The Power of OT, and is kind of starting a movement, maybe, Martina, around highlighting how important OT is as a profession. So you're really welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jay. I'm delighted on this lovely day to be joining you and Anya. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So
You're so
tell
welcome.
us, I mean, you've been an OT for a long time. We don't expect your whole history, but give us the highlights. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been an OT for over 40 years, which makes me sound really, really old, but suppose I am. 43 years, I think, or 42 or something like that. I've stopped counting. But yes, the highlights, there's been many. First of all, I left my job 25 years ago this month, which is amazing. I left it in the year 2000. I was working as an NHS employee here up in the north of Ireland in community mainly at that time. But I had been around a number of psychiatry and different stroke rehab was my big passion. And I left 25 years ago and I set up independently, and the rest really is history because I never looked back since.
And did you set up Seating Matters straight away, or did you have a different clinic first of all?
No. I set up because I live in the northwest of Ireland, so you're right up on the north coast, really isolated. And to get to Belfast is about a 2-hour drive. And the roads are a lot better now than they were 25 years ago. But so for people who wanted to purchase a piece of equipment or get an assessment done or anything, there was just no facilities here. And I thought, right, I'm going to set up a clinic. So it was the first independent clinic in Ireland, I think. I equipped it with all sorts of equipment. So I had wheelchairs and we had bathing aids, we had stair lifts, we had everything that an occupational therapist would need to do a proper assessment in the community. And people come in and they got the assessment done. But I was dependent on this to pay my wages, so I felt, right, I can't just sit here waiting for people to come in. I need to go out and tell people what I'm doing. So I went out and I started in care homes. And the thing that everybody said to me was, that person's sliding off a seat, that person has a pressure injury, we can't feed that person because we have to keep them in bed. There was all sort of issues around seating. So I started to get more involved in seating in care homes because I was really trying to promote OT and what an independent OT could do. So I just very gradually became seating. And then I made a decision that all the other equipment would have to go by the wayside. If I was going to become a specialist in an area, I really needed to learn more because I was seen as a seating therapist in my job, but that was just something I was always interested in. So I decided I would go and do extra training and extra learning, and seating then became the big passion in all the care homes. And what happened then was I started to source equipment from various companies around the UK. I even went further afield. I went to Germany looking for better chairs. I went to Denmark one time looking for better chairs. I just started to go thinking there must be something better on the market, and I kept looking and kept going to shows. And one day my husband said, why don't you make the chairs? And I thought, no, we can't do that, because what if someone falls out of the chair? What if someone gets a pressure injury? But at this stage we were adapting the chair so much that my husband highlighted to me, well, you're probably, the manufacturer's probably not going to stand over these chairs anyway, because we've done so much adapting to them. Because he was an engineer, he was a very creative person, very hands-on, and I combined the clinical skills that I had with his engineering skills, and we were adapting chairs. So I set up about 2000, and until 2008, that's what we did. And then in 2008, we launched Seating Matters.
Incredible. Incredible. And when you launched Seating Matters, Martina, what was that like?
Well, it was very scary, I have to say, because we had been using other manufacturers up until that point, and you sort of felt you had a bit of backing from other manufacturers, but all of a sudden the buck definitely stopped with us, and as a family, the responsibility, and I felt that greatly, the responsibility to my patients, to the carers. And I have to say, the first few chairs that went out, they had to go out quite quickly, because the transition from being a customer with a big company to being independent happened very quickly. And because of that, the chairs, my husband had a lot of contacts. He knew people in welding, he knew people in wood, he knew people in foaming. He had his own business, so he was able to get a lot of subcontractors in to make the chair, and they went out quite quickly. And there were issues. Now, thankfully there was never anyone at any risk, but the quality mightn't been as good as I would have liked in the first few months because of the speed at which we had to get them out. But I was always very conscious of the fact that patients are sitting in these, carers are using them, so it was quite scary. But eventually, over the next few months, we started to bring everything in-house and have more control over the quality of the product. And within the first year, or even less, the chairs really, the quality of them really started to improve, and my confidence in them started to improve as well, because it was a scary time really to be you were totally responsible for the product and for everything around it, insurance of it and everything. But we've been so fortunate that nothing dramatic ever happened. We had a lot of support. They were called Martina's chairs in Northern Ireland because the OTs all knew me at this stage, and they would say, "Oh, let's get Martina's chair." So that's sort of the name they went by it in the early days. So, but it worked out very well.
So I can imagine the fear, because it's always that kind of sense of responsibility of what if it goes wrong, and we look at the wrong rather than the right, but also an opportunity for great creation and really kind of making exactly what you and your client or your patient needed. Was that the first time that you felt that level of creativity in what you were doing?
It was a great opportunity because we did become known, and much to our detriment many a time, as being the person who will solve any issue with seating. Like, we didn't say no to anything. No matter what the issue was, we started from scratch and we made the chair to suit that individual. And we did become known in those early days for a long time as the bespoke. If company A, B and C can't sort you out, go to Seating Matters. And so therefore we were getting a lot of the bespoke, which was great because it was really right up my street, really, sorting out individual problems. But from a business perspective, it wasn't great because they only came to us when they had an issue. You were getting all the bespoke, the complex, and then we needed to, in order to survive, we needed to do more streamlined, adaptable chairs. So we've been able to manage that, to still have the patient at the centre of it, still meet their needs, but have it more adaptable, that it's more universal for people as well. So, but we still do bespoke and we still do one-offs, But it was a great opportunity, and my husband really was the creative one. I was the clinical one, the one that was a little bit nervous about everything, and he was the one that, he had never had a job in his life. He left school, set up his own business, and was very successful in his own business, and just never saw anything as a risk. He just saw it as an opportunity. So he never worried about anything. So I did all the worrying and he did all the work.
I'm absolutely fascinated though, Martina, because there's a bit of me that's like, so what did it look like, in this warehouse or workshop that you had? you know, when you'd get in this order for, you know, a complex seating, you know, what did it look like back then? Did you go out and see the person first? Did they come to you? Because we don't hear of OTs being that innovative to start their own seating company, to build a product, you know. So I'm just like, what was it like? Yeah.
Every assessment that was done in the initial was done by me. So I did all the assessments in the early days. And then I would do a very in-depth assessment what the person needed, and then I would go back usually to James and Ryan. I have 3 sons in the business and a daughter who's not really in the business, but she's in a different part of the company. But so if I had 3 sons, and at that stage it was Ryan, the middle guy, who really was the engineer, the one that was thinking about manufacture. So between Ryan and my husband James, they were able to come up with a plan, and I very carefully, we watched like what we were doing, if it was very unique, and we tried it. And in those days, like 2008, there wasn't the same technology as we have now with all the CAD drawn, and we have got really good engineers now who can put things up on the screen in 2 minutes and just feed everything in. So technology has advanced a lot, but like we did great things, you know. Keeping the person and the patient always at the centre of it, of what the patient actually needed. So I really was quite proud of some of the achievements we had, especially when people came and had tried every other company and said, you know, we just can't get it right for this person. They're very complex, and it was really a good achievement to be able to do that. But it was a bit
phenomenal.
I have to say, what is the workshop? The workshop is my garage. It's still there. I mean, if I turned this round, you'd be looking out at it. I used to tell OTs, I woke up in the morning and I was looking out the factory. I don't think they believe me, but it's absolutely true. So it was 24 hours nearly a day at that stage. You know, you never really had a break because you were up early in the morning, you were out, you were doing whatever, and then at night you were getting ready for the next day. So it was definitely long hours and hard work, but most definitely worth it, 100%, especially now.
Yeah, gosh, what you've created is phenomenal. You know, to move, like, having seen your displays at the OT show in Birmingham, and you'd such an incredible range of equipment there that it was like, when you describe it now, it's like, gosh, like it was beautiful. It's like, yeah.
It has come a long way. It has come a long way, and we rarely send a product out now that has an issue with it or that's wrong. We run what we call lean manufacturing. Again, it was Ryan who really initiated that. You'll see his YouTube videos on it and everything. And we are very much focused around getting it right first time round for the patient and for the care staff. So we rarely send something out that has a fault anymore, but in the early days, like, we were running around fixing things, but now we're a very sleek organisation, and that's really down to the people as well, because we have really good professional staff, you know, that do a really good job. Mm-hmm.
And I guess seating is, I'm a mental health OT. I obviously looked at physical, but it's not my area. Seating is part of allowing somebody to engage in meaningful occupation or activity, and you know, is a critical part of the assessment to allow that then an intervention plan. Have you had any unusual requests for seating for any kind of specific occupations that were surprising, or things that you maybe less run of the mill?
That's a good question. I want to tell you one story. It's maybe not going to answer your question exactly, but I want to tell you one story, and it happened in the south of Ireland in one of the long-term facilities for people with learning disability. And an OT had been given the task of going in to assess all these patients for a chair, because they had been sitting in chairs, the same old chairs, for years and years. And it was one of is it St. John of God? Am I saying that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's quite a long time ago. So anyway, we went in to do this assessment with this gentleman. He had a learning disability, he had no verbal communication, and he was sitting in a chair that had been bolted to the floor because he was rocking a lot, and this was the only way they could secure him. It was made from wood, metal, and a little bit of padding, and he was strapped in the chair because of his involuntary movement and how much rocking he did. And the OT, I always said, what are we trying to achieve here? That was always my question to the OT. What do you want? And she says, I want three things. She says, I need a safe chair, I need a comfortable chair, and I also want one that I can move around, because we want to involve him in activities, because at the minute he just sits in this one spot every day. So I thought, I brought in our Atlanta chair, which ticked all those boxes. So the Atlanta chair is a very low chair. I'm sure you've seen it. It's very safe and secure. It's very comfortable. And it's also on wheels. So we thought, here we go. We've ticked all the boxes right away. We put him in it. We wheeled him, and he sat very comfortably. And I was staying down in the south of Ireland for a few days doing the various assessments, and I said, why don't I just leave the chair overnight and see how it works? Because I was never one for selling a chair. I was always one for providing a solution and making sure it was right. So I wanted to make sure it was right. So I left the chair, and when I went back in the next day, we discovered he was sitting back in the old chair that was 15 years old, that was uncomfortable. And I said, what happened? And they brought in this lady that knew him very well, and they said he went berserk, her words, when we put him in your chair and brought him out here. He went berserk. And what we discovered was he couldn't see out the window. He was so low down in our comfortable, safe, mobile chair that he couldn't see out the window. And for all the years that he'd been sitting there, he had been watching the ambulances come and go, dropping people off for daycare. He'd been watching people, he could see out. And when we put him in, he was looking at a wall. And it just struck me that, first of all, our goals are not our patient's goals. We have to really find out, what does the patient need? Now, he had no verbal communication, so he couldn't tell us, but he certainly told us when we put him in the chair the next day. And so what we did, we adapted the chair. We put it on the same thing you'd have a bed on, a pump that you can pump it up. So when the OT wanted him, when he wanted to sit in that area, he could look out the window, and then we lowered it so that you could involve him in activities and that. So it mightn't answer your question, but it always struck me that sometimes we have to really think about the patient, because OTs sometimes have really thought, well, this is what we need to do, this is what the patient needs. And then you find the piece of equipment sitting either in a store or in a corner of a house, and it's not being used. So I think that's a big lesson I learned there.
That's an incredible story. It does remind me a lot of, I wouldn't have huge seating experience at all. But at one point when I worked in children's services, I would have done some seating for kids, and that was the constant piece that you would see. You would go out and people's hallways would be full of pieces of equipment that were just too big, too clunky, didn't actually meet the family's needs, too heavy for mothers to manoeuvre or with other kids. And it was always that bit of going, actually, can we just strip it right back? What's the one thing that will actually be used and that will help in some way?
Initially, when I set up, it was always about the patient. That's sort of the way I was trained and the way I thought. And then over years, I realised it was not just about the patient, it's about the carer. And what we need to make it easy for the carer to use this product, to move it, to adapt it, to change it. And if the carer doesn't like it, they're not going to use it with the patient. Even outside care staff coming in, family members, if it's, as you say, Anya, too difficult. So it's not just about the patient. They are number one initially, but it has to be really very closely aligned with how easy it is for the care staff and the family to use it. And that's where we've been successful, because we've made them lighter, made them easier to move, easier to adapt. I mean, you can adapt our chairs within 2 minutes without using any tools. It's all very easy adaptable. You can reduce the size, the width, the height. And that is basically because we've been thinking about what does the care staff need. It's not just about the patient.
That's incredible, Martina, because it was one of the biggest bits for me back in 2008, and it was one of the reasons why I would have left that job. Was I ended up having an accident, and when I went back to work, I could not do any of the chairs, couldn't do any of them, because you've always got to get down low to get out your anything, to move them, to do anything with them. And it's only when you can't do it that you realise how awkward they are. And when you said there about the heaviness, that's one thing that always sticks with me with seating, is that obviously not anymore. So much has changed. but the weight of them. Even the lightweight ones were heavy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's something, as I say, we have been working on and still work on every day, you know. And the thing that we do very well, I think, is we talk a lot to OTs and care staff and users, and we get a lot of feedback. And when we do like one of our workshops, we are looking for feedback all the time, and we implement it. And that's because we're still a small enough family business, and we run what I said earlier, lean manufacturing, which means we don't make a whole lot of product and have it sitting on shelves and bring it down when a patient makes an order. We build to order. So we only build, we do not make that chair until we have an order in for it, and we make that chair up for that specific order. We don't, if you were in our factory, which I hope you will sometime come and visit, you won't see a whole lot of arms, a whole lot of leg rests, a whole lot of cushions. You will see nothing except the chair that is in production for that patient at that time. Which means that if we have to adapt a chair, we don't, what happens, a lot of companies are buying in chairs maybe from other companies, and they've all this stock, and if they need to make a change, they can't make that change for about 6 months or a year because they've so much stock to get rid of. Whereas we don't do that, and we adapt quite quickly. So if something we notice, well, like, we've been asked for that the last 3 times, let's just make that standard. So we've improved the chair for everyone by listening to the feedback. So that's one of the benefits of running a lean company, is that you can make changes, really implement them within a few days or a week. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Martina, you've written this fab book, The Power of OT, or Power of Occupational Therapy, and you spoke to lots of different occupational therapists. You have a podcast, the Martina Tierney podcast. What set you on that course?
Well, I'm at the end of my career, I always say, because the active part of going out and doing assessments and doing all that, I don't do as much of that now because I've got such a really good team of OTs and clinicians that can do that. One thing I used to be really proud of, when I would walk out to the factory, I knew where every chair was going. I knew who was going to sit in every chair because I had done all the assessments. And then one day I thought, you're never going to grow this business if you have to hold on to that and be the one that does what. If you want to really impact people across the world, you're going to have to train other people to do what you do. So then we started to bring in OTs and nurses, and also train up our own staff to do these assessments, so that we're able to meet the needs of more people. And then my career moved on, and I thought, I always, when I was a younger OT, I wasn't a very confident OT. I always felt, that other professions were getting more recognition than I was. So, and because of that, I can see, when I look back in my career, I can see where I've gone. And for example, when I worked in stroke, I felt like the physiotherapists, the speech and language therapists, they were getting more recognition than me. So I went and done a course, it was a MOBATH course then, and I really learnt everything I could. And I went back very confident to my job, and I stood up quite proudly and said, like, this is what the OT can do. And so I found myself at every part of my career. I went, like I said earlier, when I went into seating, I thought, I need to learn everything I need to know about this so that I become a specialist. And I just felt that when I got to this part of my career a few years ago, I thought, OTs, because I had been going to universities and speaking to OTs, I felt that the students were still feeling a little bit as if they were second to some of the other. And I thought, why do they feel like that? Because we've got so much to offer, and as the OT profession is just such a great profession, they need to know this. And so I thought, and I had known so many OTs around the world, and I just thought, this would be a good way of just talking to OTs, and then that book just goes out. We don't charge for that book. It's a book we just want to spread out so that OTs, some of the students, or even people who are still working in OT that have been there for 10 or 15 years, that they lift that book and they get a little bit inspired by some of the people who have contributed to it, and realise, family members have read that book, and after all these years have said, we didn't know what an OT did. Imagine. So I think it's good. It's just really, I'm very passionate about the fact that we need to keep promoting OT, and OTs need to get more confident. And there's a line in the book, or a quote from someone, we're no longer a young profession. We've been around. It's up to us now to stand up and be counted. You can't complain about all physios or the OT or the speech and language therapists. No, stand up yourself and train and become a specialist in your own area and be proud of being an OT. And that's why I did the book. And then I went on to do the podcast for the reason was there were so many good stories. And I realised I can't just keep writing more books because, there's so many good stories out there. And how do we get those people to, because people love telling their story. And it's really inspirational for other people as well. So it was actually Dervla that said, why don't you do a podcast? And again, never would have thought of it. But Dervla, our marketing manager who you spoke to earlier, she thought, rather than writing more and more books and interviewing more people, let's just do a podcast.
Have a chat. Yeah, we love it. Love both. It's great to have the written option, but love listening to people's voices and stories. And narratives and OTs are very good at storytelling, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's so interesting because at the moment there's, I don't know, maybe it's some of the things that I've been engaged in, but you can hear this emphasis so much from our clients and people we work with that listening to people is the real power in what we can do when we listen really well. And it's interesting after listening to some of the podcast episodes that you've put out there, you really hear this theme come through again, like in so many different areas of health, be it from diabetes to mental health. But how do we listen to people to find out what is their occupational identity, what matters to them, that we can actually support with it. So, yeah, I definitely encourage people to have a listen to your podcast. There's such a range of speakers on it and different perspectives.
And it was interesting when you start talking to someone, and OTs, they've got so much more to them than just being an OT. I've interviewed people and found out that some of them were great poets and they were writing poetry. Interviewed someone, found out that he loved playing the drums. And I had him on, we were just talking about this particular person, we were just talking about COVID and about his work with stroke. And then I don't know how we got round to the subject, and he actually was a great musician. And there's so much more to a person than just what you see as well. So I'd give them the opportunity to, and one of our interviewees, is that what you call them? She ended up writing the book after that of poetry, because we encouraged her to read it out on podcasts. So not only are we're promoting the profession, but we're promoting the people as well, which is good. People love, as you say, to talk about their story, and it's very important.
They do.
Mm-hmm. And what about yourself, Martina? Because you obviously are a businesswoman. You've got a really successful business empire at this stage, and obviously your family is very important. They're involved in the business as well. Mm-hmm. But what do you do to mind yourself? What is your kind of form of relaxation or self-care, if we want to use those words?
Yeah. I wasn't very good at that, I have to say, for a very long time. I was just too busy to think about myself, but I definitely know now. First of all, I read a lot of, there's people I read a lot of books on spiritual sort of books. John O'Donoghue is one of my favourite authors, and I read a lot about that. But I also am part of a walking group, so I do hill walking, which once you get the boots on and you get the poles and get out on the mountain, you really do forget about everything. So I do walking. I also have 8 grandchildren now, and I do try very hard to involve them and have them together, because my sons are so busy that I'm thinking these children need to know each other. So I do spend a lot of time with them, and I'm actually having sleepover. They're having a sleepover here tonight, and I take them to I have a house in Donegal, which is a great, everyone says it's only a small 3-bedroom cottage, but as soon as you walk into it, you just feel the stress levels reducing. I don't know if it's because it's Donegal or what, but so I take the grandchildren there, and we have sleepovers, and we go to the beach. So I have learnt that it's so important, and I am trying to tell my sons and my daughter-in-laws and my daughter that they need to spend quality time, because I have to say that in the early days with myself and my husband, it was just work all the time, and there was very little time. but we were enjoying it. It wasn't stressful. We were having fun and we were enjoying it. But in more recent, things have got more stressful for people, I think, and they really do need to take time out to spend with their families and look after themselves. And that's what I do. I walk, go to the beach, go to Donegal and spend time with the grandchildren. They're my main activities.
That's fab. It sounds fab.
Yeah.
And if you, if there's occupational therapists listening, if you had a message for the occupational therapists of Ireland, what would you like to encourage them with, or what would be your vision for OT in Ireland in the future? I
would like OTs, as I said earlier, to become more confident and more proud of their profession, and follow their passion. Like, what if there's an area that they really would love to try or love to do, because sometimes we get set in a job and you think because you're in that job and you're getting your salary and everything that you can't, you feel that you're on a bit of a treadmill and you can't really do what you really want to do. And I really would encourage, because in the book you'll see people who have done work with horses. You know, you see people, you know, they've done so many things outside of, like, that is OT, but it's outside of their normal job. So try something different as well, so you can keep your job and dip your toe in private practice, dip your toe in something else that really gives you a passion. Because if you don't have a passion for it, you're not giving your best to your patient either. If you're just doing a job in order to tick a box to get a salary, you're not giving your best to the patient, and you're definitely not doing the best for yourself. And there's also a bit in the book I say, you know, you can't, what is the phrase? You can't fill from an empty jar or whatever. Yeah. You know, you can't keep giving if you're not giving to yourself first. And so you need to really be doing something that really is something that's making you feel good, and therefore what you do, the patient benefits more. I have a young OT there. She contacted me after I wrote the first book, The Stairway of My Life, and she said there was parts of that book that resonated with her life. She's only 36, but she's starting off on the journey that I started off on with seating matters. And she contacted me and she said, I'm working in this job and I really want out of it. I really want to do something on my own. What would you say? And I just said, well, you need to do it. You need to go for it. Because if you're in a job, she says, and she was very like me in that I loved my patients. I loved doing the seating assessments. I just did not like the constrictions of working in a job. I just didn't like everything that was around that. I wasn't a good employee. Definitely not. And if you're not a good employee, if you don't like arriving at a certain time and staying to a certain time, I mean, I ran a bed and breakfast while I was working as an OT, so it wasn't easy for me to get to work at 9 o'clock every day, because I had to make breakfast here and I had to get my guests out. But like when I was in with a patient at 5 o'clock, I wasn't watching thinking, oh, I need to go home now. I would have stayed with that patient at 6 o'clock in order to get it right. Because I love doing that, but that doesn't fit in with a job. You need to be there and I understand that you can't have people like me running around all sorts of. But at the same time, if it suits you to arrive at 9 o'clock and go at 5 and you're content, that's good. But if it doesn't, you really need to try something that's going to make you more. You know, it's going to fulfill yourself, because that's when you give your best, when you're doing something you love.
You're speaking our language.
Yeah, absolutely, Martina. It's so inspiring for people, because, like what you said earlier, occupational therapy is so creative. And as you, even when you were saying about interviewing people, so many times people's story is so much bigger than just this piece of their professional career. Mm-hmm. And I think it just allows people to bring in and to tap into so many other pieces that they can turn into a business, even if it's just on a very small scale or something they enjoy. But how we actually, you know, how we do that and how we go about it.
Yeah. I would encourage OTs as well to read the book, because you will find, you can just flick down through and find a chapter that you really, that might resonate with you, because there's bound to be something in there. And also, if you have a story that you want, come on the podcast, your podcast, somebody's podcast, and talk about your story, which might inspire somebody else as well.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Martina, thank you so much for all of the work that you've done for our profession, and thank you for your time today and for your ongoing expertise in seating and in seating for occupational therapy in Ireland. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Not at all.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Martina.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Anya. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you good luck with your endeavours as well. Thank you.
Super. Thanks.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast.
Thank you so much for listening and for being part of our occupational therapy community. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe and share it with a colleague and join the conversation.
We'd really appreciate it. We'll be back soon with more insights into occupational therapy in physical health. So until next time, take care.